grabbed my hand and wrapped my hand around the bottle and took the thing off and forced it down my throat and made me drink the Pepsi. Held my nose. Drink the Pepsi! Right? Did I drink the Pepsi freely of my own free will?
No.
No, of course not. And I was forced. I was physically forced to do that. I was compelled, and that's an act of compulsion. Well, what if somebody, took out an Uzi and said, "Drink that Pepsi"? Am I acting on my own free will when I go ahead and drink the Pepsi?
No.
Actually, you can get shot.
No, because you're still following somebody else's direction.
It's
that are given
possible
to you.
for me to say, "Go ahead." I'm not going to drink that Pepsi. Riddle me full of bullets. I don't care.
That sounds like Socrates to me.
Yeah, it sounds like Socrates. I'm not that much of a principled.
That's what
No one's going to make me do. No.
Just drink the
That's
Pepsi.
what's known as coercion. I've been coerced into doing something. Somebody holds a gun to your head and they say, open up the safe. You're not really acting on your own free will there. There's a huge coercive element there that somebody else is doing. Who's responsible for your actions? One way to think about it.
Who is responsible?
If somebody's holding a gun to your head and they make you open a safe,
they're responsible.
they're responsible.
So you're not doing it.
I don't think you would be held responsible in that case. I think in most cases people would say, "Oh, no. That kind of coercion, the responsibility falls, at least the lion's share of the responsibility falls on them." Yes.
I mean, yeah, you wouldn't be found responsible in the court of law, but technically, I mean, and not to bring up like something sad, but the woman who drove her minivan into the river,
She was totally responsible for the death of the children. There was no way they could stop it.
Hold on, I'm not sure exactly what story we're talking about.
This happened maybe
2 days ago.
2 days ago, where a woman had her 3 children. One was able, the 10-year-old, to crawl out the car, but she drove the car into the river and she drowned, killing herself and the children. Yeah, I think
She
so.
did this
Like,
deliberately.
Literally.
But she wanted to die, and she wanted to take her kids with her.
But one was able to get out, climb
And one
out
of
the
them managed to
window.
get out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, nobody's holding a gun to her head, right?
Right.
So arguably, unless there's something else going on
See,
chemically or psychologically,
that she's responsible.
then she's responsible.
The children are not responsible.
No, the children are not responsible, because they're the victims in this case. If she made her 10-year-old son drive the van into the river, that would be similar to what we're talking about, and he wouldn't be responsible, right? Yeah.
yeah, the comment said that she had, so the answer is that before that, she had a heated argument with the kid's father.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, this starts to get into some of the trickier aspects of exactly deciding when an act is done freely and therefore involving the agent, or when there's some other considerations that.
But I do know, according to our notion, that our act is done fully because, as far as law enforcement was concerned, there's never been a call of domestic violence. So whatever the situation was, argument that she had,
Right.
determined to what we can respond to the fact that she did her own free will of her own.
Yeah, and the thing is, the law does what it does because it's got to deal with certain sorts of practicalities. But hopefully underlying that law is something like a principle considering when does an agent act freely and
And when
thus
doesn't.
are they responsible.
And this is one point
and when
which
don't they? And
she
that's
acts
exactly
freely.
what Ayer's getting at, but he's on a more philosophical level. He's saying clearly there are examples where something you do is not your free will doing it, it's an act of compulsion. He doesn't actually mention coercion, or he kind of smears the two.
No, that's not
into
Ayer,
one
it's the
another.
other guy. that
But if
mentioned
somebody's got a
about
gun
the
to your
2-year-old.
head, then presumably that also isn't an act of free will on your part. At least not in the completely free sense that we mean. But if no gun, nobody running up and making me do it, I take the Pepsi, I think about whether I want to take a drink, I decide yes I do, and I go ahead and do it. Isn't that a clear case of acting freely?
It could seem that way, but since you
Hold
had...
on.
Could you take determinism so far as to, let's say, take a person out of the people in general, out of the scene.
Well,
Just
yeah.
this whole idea of responsibility,
Sure.
in where you take the personal subjective element out and make responsibility itself an effect or a cause, so that the effect of what she did results in responsibility in that her being responsible. Couldn't you say that that's a deterministic quality in itself? That responsibility is just one of the elements so put forth out by this great pool game that it applies to all elements that we choose to apply. And we just assume that we choose to apply it through free will, but that's not necessarily a true assumption.
Well, I think what most people would say, most philosophers would say, is that responsibility is a feature at our level of description. Persons are or are not responsible. But at a level of description where determinism seems to be compelling, what we would call responsibility would actually turn out to be some extremely complex combination of those forces and those constituent elements bouncing around in certain ways. In which case, if that's all we mean by responsibility, fine. It's going to, again, be a very complex description, but it's not going to have the same kind of philosophical significance that responsibility has at this level of discussion. Again, it's almost as if the language seems to describe something at this level that we can't see a basis for at this level.
But the only reason we describe it at that level is an assumption of free will.
Well, we describe it at this level, arguably yes, because somewhere along the way, free will it seems to be presumed. I mean, when you look at Descartes, for example, when he says, "I think, therefore I am," there's a point in there where he basically says, "I do this freely, and I know I do it freely because I'm the one doing it." It's directly known that I'm acting freely. And this is where Nagel comes in and says, well, maybe that direct perception that you're acting freely is just an illusion. Maybe we're not actually acting freely. So maybe, yeah, maybe that term, responsibility, is a ghost term. It actually doesn't apply. Yeah, it's kind of a fictitious sort of term that we use all over the place that maybe if we really understood what was going on would simply disappear from our vocabulary.
Because it kind of seems to me, if determinism were true, right, and we made people take responsibility for their actions, then there's no reason why determinism can't argue that the fact that we make people take responsibility for their actions is merely a cause and effect of all the elements balancing together.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, perhaps we can't hold anybody responsible for their actions on a philosophical level, but that we will, if determinism is true, is predetermined.
That's true.
Right? Maybe the guy stands before the judge and he says, hey judge, I'm not responsible because, the universe made me do this. And the judge is going to say, it makes me do this too. Guilty!
Well, in the case from...
if determinism is true, then it could not have been otherwise.
In that case at, what's his name? What's the author's name? The philosopher's name?
Ayer?
No, Stephen
Kant.
That one particular case,
Well,
he won.
Kant. Yes, we'll
Kant.
get to that in just a second.
Yeah.
Because I want to develop what Kant has to say after we complete discussion of what Ayer is saying. Ayer again is saying we can be determined and we can be free. And that seems incompatible, but as long as we're not being compelled or coerced, it's because what's doing the determining of the action is us. If what determines the action is us, and nothing else, then we acted freely. And it doesn't matter, according to Ayer, that everything about us is determined because of antecedent conditions, as long as we're the ones actually doing it without being compelled or coerced to do so. That's an act of free will.
But
Danielle.
I just a little brainstorming here. For example, if I sit on the couch and I think I want an apple, and I get up and get it. What makes me do that? Is that maybe my unconsciousness?
Well,
Or like what I just wrote down is there a good reason why the unconsciousness should plant the thought that gives the impression of free will, but why?
well, that's interesting. Somebody else suggested an unconscious or a subconscious agent as well. But that starts to sound really strange. So you're saying it's not actually me that does the getting up and getting the apple, it's my subconscious. So
But how do we know?
there's some other agent in there. There's not just a ghost in the machine. There might be a couple of ghosts in the machine that
Right.
occasionally take over the controls in a way that the machine is completely unaware of.
That's true.
That just sounds a little spooky. We don't really have a well-developed theory of exactly what we mean when we talk about the subconscious or the unconscious. I mean, Freudian theory, Jungian theory, psychological theories, they're all based on, you know, hypotheses that are yet being tested. But it's not as if you can actually confirm that, oh yes, in fact, we do have a clear subconscious agent inside all of us that is responsible for these acts. If we do, then are we doing it? Or is our subconscious the free agent?
Well, this is really what interests me the most, how the conscious and unconscious works, and how all this.
No, I agree. It's
And this
remarkable.
is just amazing to me, like,
I
maybe the
think
decisions had already been made.
Maybe. I think at this point a lot of people would say, well, it's not as if they're two separate things. It's more like an iceberg. And there may be a whole lot that's beneath the surface that we're just not directly aware of, but it's still the whole iceberg that is the agent, that is the person who acts, that is the thing that freely chooses or not to. And we're only aware of the little bit that sticks up above the conscious level. Well, that's an account of personhood that's rather interesting and has some bearing on it. But if that's what we are, then it just means that not all of our free willing is transparent to ourselves. But we may still be free. It's just be much more complicated. On the other hand, what's causing the subconscious to make these decisions for us? If what's causing the subconscious to do this is some other set of antecedent conditions, that starts to sound more like the determinist is right. We think we freely choose to get up and go get that apple, but it's actually our subconscious. Well, what motivated our subconscious? Well, now we can tell this complicated story about, you know, childhood trauma and what caused that. Well, maybe because we were, you know, the victims of something that was done to us that whoever did it to us was also the victim of, you know, the way abusers tend to abuse kind of thing.
But with Freud and the interpretations of the dreams and all that, I don't give that too much thought.
Well, not necessarily dreams, but subconscious motivation or unconscious motivation.
Everybody get away
What
with
if a
everything this way?
If that's the
Record this
case,
up, you just say,
if that's the
hey.
case, it does start to
Unconsciously.
sound like determinism is true. And what you're talking about is exactly what Stephen Kahn is going to get to in his article, which I want to get to in just a couple of minutes here.
I just have one.
So hang on.
But wouldn't that type of, anything, like she mentioned for the apple to be subconscious to go get the apple, wouldn't that be more on the physical, on the urge of hunger? I mean,
Why do I
yeah,
want
because
it would be.
because
Yeah, it would
if
seem like it
it,
would be.
because that's more physical.
Well, maybe.
Because if you are hungry, you have, that's a physical response that you cannot control,
But why do you get the apple if you're not hungry?
huh?
Well, if
That's
you get the
another-
apple when you're not hungry,
Hungry,
then it probably suggests that there's some sort of
yeah.
previous motivations.
But
that
if you get it, if
who
you
knows
are
why.
hungry,
Again, the
that's
trauma
a physical
story,
response.
Or, you know, your favorite uncle used to like apples, and so that's what made you do it. So on and so forth.
But if you get it, if it's just you are hungry.